10 Sports Central will be going over our next final prediction of this offseason, and it's going to be over the Philadelphia Eagles. And this is a team last season that was 9-7 in the regular season. They made it to the wild card round. So overall, this team was a very good one in the 2019 season. And of course, they did have their ups and downs in the end, but still, they were able to go 9-7, which really is not all that terrible. But today we're going to be going over 2020 and why I think the Eagles could be a potential dark horse contender in the NFC. And we're also going to be going over your returning production, along with a full prediction and preview on every game on the Eagles schedule heading into the 2020 season. With that, let's look at your season trends from last season. Once again, they were 9-8 overall. They were 9-7 in the regular season. They were 4-4 between September and October, then 5-4 between November and the postseason. Once again, this is a team that did improve over the season, I would say. At the beginning of the season, this team still was good. They had a couple of really good wins. That's highlighted by that win in Green Bay against the Packers, 34-27. But really, their big win started to come towards the end of the season when, as you can see, they beat off the Bills on the road, 31-13. That game wasn't even close. So that was quite a win there. And you also had a big win against the Cowboys, of course, 17-9. That's kind of what partially what gave the Eagles the ability to make it to the playoffs last season. And they also beat up the Giants on the road, 34-17. So overall, once again, just a good season for the Eagles. I wouldn't say it's great, of course. It's nothing compared to how they won the Super Bowl a couple of seasons back. But in the end, still a good season for the Eagles, going 9-7 in the regular season. As far as the returning production looks, I think it looks very good, though, for the Eagles going into next season. Of course, you return your starting quarterback, Carson Wentz, which, he's a great quarterback for sure, don't get me wrong, but he is very injury prone. Of course, it's been very tough for him to be able to finish off a season. And we've said that many times in the past. Nick Foles, when he was with the Eagles, would always have to come in for Carson Wentz when he would get injured and finish off the season for him, which, it ended up turning out well in that season when they won the Super Bowl, but in the end for Carson Wentz, as long as he can stay healthy, this Eagles team will be just fine at the quarterback position. They also returned their top running back, Miles Sanders, which he was a great running back last season, really came out of nowhere. No one really knew who Miles Sanders was before last season, and of course, after he put up a major season for the Eagles in 2019, that was a great season for him for sure. One of the best running backs in the league in the 2019 season. Their second running back, Jordan Howard, is now with Miami, so he will no longer be with the Eagles next season. So overall, that's not all that terrible. He did have a decent season, but nothing in comparison to how Miles Sanders and what the yardage that he put up. As far as the receiving core, you do return your top receiver and your tight end one, Zach Ertz. And this is a very tight end heavy team. The most tight end heavy team I've seen in a very long time. Their top two receivers were both tight ends, as they had Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. And both of them tight ends, they were very good last season. And of course, Zach Ertz especially, by far, I'd say he was probably the best tight end in the nation last season, in the entire league. And Dallas Goedert wasn't far behind. I'm sure if Goddard were to go to a different team, such as Miami or something like that, I'm sure he'd have great success there. Considering Miami really doesn't have a tight end in the first place. Dallas Goedert could definitely be a tight end one at a different location for sure. And so for the Eagles to have both of them coming back as well, that's going to be huge for Carson Wentz, especially in that offense. As far as the receiving core goes, the real wide receiver core, you've got Alshon Jeffrey, of course, coming back. And your wide receiver 2, Nelson Agholor, is no longer with the Eagles. He is now with the Las Vegas Raiders. And so he will not be with this team next season. But then again, Agholor was a big disappointment last season, only 300 yards. And Alshon Jeffrey himself, he's been kind of an up-and-down receiver. He had 450 yards last season. So, it was nothing in comparison to the tight ends, but still he had a decent season. As far as the players that they're bringing in, a couple of big-time ones would be defensive back Slay, Darius Slay. He's coming in from Detroit, which he is one of the best defensive backs in the nation. So that's going to be a huge pickup for the Eagles going into next season. And you also bring in wide receiver Godwin out of San Francisco. So that's going to be a big return too. And I'm guessing he's going to be kind of your replacement for Nelson Agholor, which I think that's honestly a good move. Nelson Agholor's been there for quite a while. He's had some success, but he's not had crazy success. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not Goodwin can be able to put up the yardage that they're expecting him to. But in the end, they're losing a couple of big players as well. Their safety Jenkins is no longer with this team. Same as their defensive tackle Hargrave, which he's not going to be with this team either. And he was a great defensive tackle too. Don't forget that he was one of the best in the league last season. Brings up the question, chances of Philly winning the NFC East next season. Of course, you've got a kind of a messy NFC East And this was probably the worst division in all of the NFL last season. I mean, you had Dallas and Philadelphia, but really that was it. I mean, the Redskins, of course, they were not very good at all last season, one of the worst teams in the NFL. And then you also had the Giants, which were a big disappointment. And then you look at the Eagles and the Cowboys, both teams were hardly even able to get up to 10 wins. Like Eagles, I think they won the division with only 9 wins, which is very impressive. I mean, rarely you'll see a team win a division with only 9 wins. And it almost looks like they're going to be an 8-win division champion, which would have been a rarity. I mean, I'm not sure how common it is for that to happen. I can't really recall a team ever making it to the playoffs or winning their division with an 8-8 record. But it almost happened for the Eagles last season. Don't forget about that. But yeah, in the end, I think the Eagles, honestly, it's between them and Dallas for sure. I don't really expect much out of the Redskins next season. Kind of the same thing with the Giants. The Giants could be a dark horse contender, who knows, with Daniel Jones, but I'm not really expecting that. Until they start winning games, I don't think it's very reasonable to assume that the Giants will be good. But the Eagles and the Cowboys definitely, I think, will be battling it out for next season's division champion, and I think the Eagles are definitely a big contender, especially if Carson Wentz can stay healthy to win that division next season. As far as your schedule, looks to start the season on September 13th against the Redskins on the road, and it is no longer going to be the Redskins, of course. With everything going on, it looks like they're going to have a different name, so I'll have to change that eventually, but they will be playing in Washington on September 13th. You'll also be having the Rams and the Bengals at home in back-to-back weeks. You've got the Niners on the road, tough game there on the 4th. You got the Steelers and Pittsburgh on the 11th. You got the Ravens, Giants, and Cowboys at home for the next 3 games. And then you got 2 road trips to the Giants and the Bengals. You finish off November with a game against the Seahawks. Then the schedule from here on out is really looking tough. You got the Packers on the road again. Then you got the Saints at home. You got the Cardinals and Cowboys on the road too. And then you finish off the season with a game against Washington on January 3rd. And here's what I'm expecting out of the first half of your schedule. I think you win your first 3 games against Washington, the Rams, and the Bengals. I think all 3 of those teams definitely, especially the Rams. The Rams should give the Eagles a pretty good fight. But I think in the end, they do end up starting the season 3-0. However, I think you drop your next 3. I think you take a loss at San Francisco, and that kind of causes you to tumble a little bit. I think you lose to Pittsburgh on the road. And the Steelers next season, watch out for them. They could be a dark horse contender too. Especially if Big Ben can stay healthy. He's been kind of injury prone over the last season, and he had to deal with a pretty tough back injury last year. But I think that Steelers team, genuinely, if Ben Roethlisberger can stay healthy, I think they're going to be a good team next season. I definitely think they have a good chance to make the playoffs in the 2020 season. You also have a game against the Ravens, of course, at home on the 18th. And that one I went back and forth on. I think the Eagles will definitely stick around. But I think after coming off of 2 really tough road games and 2 really tough road losses against the Niners and the Steelers, I think the Ravens are my favorite to win that one. However, you do get a win against the Giants on October 22nd, but that is only before taking a loss to the Cowboys on November 1st. So you start off your season 4-4 for the first half of your schedule. And here's what I'm expecting out of your second half. I think you beat off the Giants for the second time in 3 weeks on November 15th. I think you beat them on the road. However, I think you take a loss to the Bengals. And of course, every team, I don't care what team it is, they've got some loss at some point in the season. Except for the Ravens last year. But every team has some sort of weird loss. And I think for the Eagles next season, that's going to be against the Bengals on the road. And the Bengals in general, they could be a 5-6 win team. You got Joe Burrow under center. Of course, it's tough to say whether or not he's going to be a good quarterback for next season. But I think the Bengals next season in general could be a potential team to hit up 5 or 6 wins. So watch out for that one there, especially with it being on the road. You have the Seahawks, Packers, and Saints then in back-to-back weeks. And of course, all 3 of those games are going to be very tough. But I think you do get a win against the Seahawks, and that kind of sets off a really good stretch for the Eagles next season. I think they beat off the Packers too. That's going to be a major win in Green Bay. And you're also going to beat off the Saints. So I've got you winning 3 very tough games in back-to-back weeks between November 30th and December 13th. However, I think you kind of take a little bit of a burnout after that. I think you take 2 losses against the Cardinals and the Cowboys. 2 road games, 2 tough ones. I think you take 2 losses against those 2 teams. And then you finish off the win against the Washington Redskins on January 3rd. So your record prediction for next season will be 9-7. And I consider giving this team a 10-6 record. But this schedule is tough. I'd say this is one of the toughest schedules in the NFL for next season. You got to play the Seahawks, Packers, and Saints, let alone having road games against the 49ers, Steelers, and Ravens. And you can't forget the road trips to the Cowboys And I mean, you also got the Bengals, of course, but I mean, in the end, yeah, this is just a tough schedule for next season. So I think for this Eagles team in general, you got to watch out for that. But in the end, let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this team. Also, let me know what record you think the Eagles will get next year. But in the end, yeah, once again, let me know your thoughts, your prediction stats as well. 6-2 at home, 3-5 on the road, 4-2 in the NFC East, and 8-4 in the NFC Conference. Once again, though, thanks again for watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central, and I'll see you all later.